Hi, and welcome to Talkward. I'm Marty Dunnix, editor-in-chief of Weekly Humorist magazine, and this is Talkward, a fun little podcast where professionally funny people come to tell awkward and cringeworthy stories. I'm very excited about today's guest. He was the second guest, I believe, on Talkward when we started, and now we are 2 years later, if you can believe it. It's very exciting, and I'm very happy to welcome back Kevin McCaffrey. Hey, Kevin, how are you?
Hey Marty, I'm great. I guess my first Talkward thing would be, who was your first guest? I did not know that I was the second guest, which I'm honored by. But of course, now that I have to ask, who beat me to the start line?
The first guest, isn't it an honor to be introduced as the second guest on something?
It is. I mean, yeah, it both actually is, and I'm also like, who is this other person? Yeah.
Wendy Starling.
Oh, I know Wendy. That's
Wendy
fine.
Starling.
That's
Wendy Starling was
yeah.
was the first guest on Talkward, and you were the second guest. And then there's been all kinds of fun people. And the challenge with having these podcasts was always I had an in-person studio, and it was very fun and nice downtown on Wall Street. But getting people to come in and getting people to schedule that kind of stuff is always sort of a challenge. And
Right.
now in the brave new world that we live in, I've been forced into a world of new technologies, and now we're doing this kind of stuff. So we can beam big name guests in from anywhere, and that's why I'm excited to have you in from Queens today. Big time guest,
Mm-hmm.
Kevin. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. The internet between us has to travel several miles, I think, in this case, which is yeah. And I do think when this all the hell started of this year, I think people were very available to guest on things like this because everyone thought, oh, this is much easier. I just do it over the computer, over the phone, whatever. And now I feel like people have it's like nature is healing itself, and people are becoming as difficult as they ever were to book on things. Like people will still bail, even though there's really not nearly as many excuses to bail as there used to be.
Very
But
true.
people still
Yeah.
do it.
I feel like when this first started happening, and all the live stand-up shows stopped, and then the Zoom shows started, and the Instagram shows started, and everybody
Mm-hmm.
wanted to book Zoom shows and Instagram shows. Like people were on Instagram Live like every minute of every day. Where I was getting these alerts. Like the second I went on to Instagram,
Yeah.
I would accidentally click on an Instagram Live, and that's kind of like accidentally walking in to someone's in the bathroom and you walk in by accident and you're like
Yeah.
I didn't mean to do this. I didn't close the door. Because
Very much so.
the
It is.
second you go into someone's Instagram Live, they can see, like, it says Marty Dundix just entered your Instagram Live, and then you feel like now I have to stay for a couple of minutes just to show that I'm
Right.
supporting whatever they're doing, instead of like instantly leaving and slamming the door. It's like, oh, did they see me? If they saw me, I have to stay. Like if you're
Yes.
if you're at a party and you wanted to leave, and then someone sees you and you're like, I'm in here for at least another half an hour, then I can make my escape. That's what
Yeah.
Instagram Live was for me.
Yeah, it's a lot of opening the door, looking around and going, nope, and then closing the door. And it is a bummer that you can also see how many people are in the room with you. Because if you pop in by accident, it's like, oh, there's 600 people in this Instagram Live. Fine, no big deal.
Yeah.
But if you pop in and it's like 9 people, it's like, oof, man, I'm about to reduce this room by 11%
Yeah, or
real quick.
like two people. You go in and it's
Yeah.
like you and maybe the other person who is a part of the Instagram Live. And you're like, I'm it. I'm their only crowd.
Yeah.
I guess I got to hang out here and watch this awkward. I don't know what this is for a couple of minutes. I would just leave
Yeah,
them
and that's
open
much.
and walk away.
Yes. I mean, that's good. I think I certainly have that instinct too, but I think you probably get functionally sucked into actually hanging around more than I do. I do a lot of like, oh, I feel bad, but I'm gone immediately.
Right. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
you're talent. So they're like, yeah, he's nice. I'm an
Right.
audience member.
Yes.
I'm like a professional audience member. So that's what I always have to do.
I mean, you're a very good audience member, and in most cases, I'd rather spend time as humans with people who are better audience members than people who are better talent,
Yeah,
um, they make for a better hang, I think.
I try. You've been doing a lot of fun stuff with podcasting for a while now, probably more so now that you're not running around the country at comedy clubs. And you did your Cubs podcast with Adam Mamawala, and you've been doing this other podcast with John Daly for how long now? And tell us about it. It's focused all about Sex in the City, and I think you just had a big milestone. So let's talk about the podcast.
Sure. The podcast is called Sex and theCidiots, Cidiots, Sex and theCidiots. And what it is that myself and a very funny TV writer named John Daly, we have been friends for almost 20 years now. We went to college together. And we're two dudes who had not seen Sex in the City. We had time on our hands. And so we decided to watch the series from the start, and it was new to us, and it began the first week of 2019, and last week or a couple weeks last week or a couple weeks ago, whatever, we ended up finishing the series. So we have not seen the movies yet, but we've gotten to the end of the series, and and it's been nice, and our listeners have been very fun, and the ones we do have been very, very involved and very interactive. So we started a Patreon where we're going to do a bunch of new stuff outside of the Sex and the City verse. Now we're going to do live drink-alongs. We have a Discord group where anyone who joins the Patreon can get in on that. So we're going to make drinks, do drink-alongs, movie watches, watch live things like The Bachelor and less important things, debates, etc., whatever. And we'll have a chat room on Discord where anyone who's a Patreon supporter can join us. And where that is just patreon.com/Kevin and John. And yeah, we're going to be doing a lot of like videos and bonus podcasts and stuff like that now. So
That's awesome. I'm just getting into this whole world of streaming and the technology of comedy, and I just downloaded Discord last week because I was a guest on like a game show in Texas, and it was interesting.
yeah, that makes sense.
So I had to download this program and I had to get into it, and I was like, oh my, there's this whole world. And it's funny when you go to a new thing, whether it's Twitch or whether it's Discord, and you go, or whether it's Reddit, and you go on and you look at the different graphics of the different maybe rooms or specific locations, and you see the number next to it, and it's like blah 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 chat room, whatever. And number of people in it, it's like 250,000 people. Blah blah blah. Next chat room, number of people in it, 40,000 people. You're like, holy shit! Like, who are these people? This is a place I am just finding out now, and there are right now like millions of people just sitting on the computer, all talking to each other, all on this one platform about who knows what.
Yeah.
And you're just like, who are these people, and how am I just getting into the? I'm so late to the game. What's happening on Discord? Like, what's happening on these places? What are they doing?
Oh, I don't really. Yeah, same. I mean, I'm like that too. Basically, the only stuff I've done on Discord before is when I'm pirating Bears games in New York.
Yeah.
Because I tried to be legit. I tried to pay for the NFL Sunday ticket, and the account wouldn't work. They wouldn't give it to me. So fuck them. I forget if this is if this is an explicit podcast or not.
No,
is it or no?
Sure, it could be explicit.
Okay. All right. So that's anyway, the NFL. Fuck them.
Not so much nudity, but language, totally fine.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Just start.
If you want that, you want that, it's on my Discord Patreon.
Yeah,
page.
that's on the Discord. That's a Patreon. Yeah, patreon.com/Kevin and John. See my boobies. So. Yeah, but that's the only thing I've done on there is there's someone who's very helpfully streaming Bears games on that because I'm from Chicago, and it's nice to be able to watch those out of market. But yeah, that and Twitch, it's like, as you said, it's whole worlds where there's thousands of people getting on here and doing things live, and it's kind of cool to be able to be on there and do things live when everything else is just sort of like, so much of TV and everything now is just on-demand stuff. It's nice to be in a moment with someone.
Yeah, it's interesting where being able to do live streams and people can jump in and talk to you, and it's interesting from a comedy standpoint. So comedy clubs got shut down, and comedy shows got shut down, and all these different, so many bar shows in New York City and across the country. And so all of these people that went to all of these shows and performed on stages and mics every night of the week all needed their
Yeah.
outlet, right? And now over the 7 months of time, people have found paths to fulfill that need, whether it's setting up shows online, whether it's making shows outside, whether it's like OnlyFans, like all these people are now
Yeah.
on OnlyFans. So there's a whole bunch of, I think, sexy and not sexy comedians who are starting OnlyFans account, and whether it's being funny and being naked or just being funny, and it's like, this is the way I'm making money now. Or what was the other one? There was like an online like chat, like an online sexy chat type company, and people could, I think the technology was meant for like live camming type sexy stuff, but then comedians were just going on and using it to tell jokes to people and hoping to get
Yes.
tips, because it's like the system is set up for one thing, stripping, but can we retrofit that to be for comedy? And I felt like people were trying new things, like in May, June, and July, where it's like, well, the system is just, all I need is a camera and an account, and I have an audience. Maybe that audience is expecting one thing, but I can give them another thing. And then they tried that, and I feel like some of that's working. Patreon, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's I guess it's just a kind of live performance, and you can tip for anything, really. So I definitely, I also know comedians who've dropped their album on Pornhub, for instance. Just in terms of doing like funny stuff on OnlyFans. Like there's comedians who just put their album out on Pornhub, and it gets listens, which is like crazy to be like, who's getting worked up and going to a porn site and is like, you know what, let me hear this dude's thoughts for a while.
Yeah.
But it happens. So you can, yeah, it's funny seeing the crisscross hijacking of different mediums. We do not have an OnlyFans yet. We'll see how the Patreon goes. But yeah.
You never know. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely,
Yeah.
it's working its way in. And, with the amount of
Yeah,
time, so many of the comics have had the time to, work out and get more fit. You never know what's going to happen.
Right. Yeah. There's been a lot of that going either way too, where it's people getting buffer and then like considerably less buff. It's going to be a real summer vacation, like school first day after summer vacation. Whenever we come out of all this, seeing how everybody's changed and developed.
Yeah, it's like, I lost like 25 pounds till June, and then I gained 40 through December, and now I'm pretty much back to where I was in February of last year. And everything's the same.
Are you, Marty? Are you in the Wall Street location right now?
I'm in Park Slope. I'm in.
Okay, you're in the apartment.
I made a Weekly Humorist bunker in Park Slope in Brooklyn, and I built like an entire there's a whole broadcasty studio in here, and I have soundproofing, and I have flat screen TVs.
It looks great.
It's nicer than the office was. Like the office, I loved. And I loved hanging out in the office, and I loved the socializing that came with the office. But
you had like wine salesman you were friends with on your floor.
The place was a party. It was a nonstop party there, and they they had wine and beer on tap at that point, and then you couldn't go into the office anymore, and nobody could come in. You couldn't have meetings anymore. No one's coming in for meetings anymore. So I went in, I dragged everything, and I built a whole thing here. And I don't leave the house anymore, so it doesn't really matter. No commuting.
Sure, no,
these are some things that you're noticing. I don't commute anymore, which means I don't buy food anymore outside for lunch. It's an amazing expense, the commuting and food, when you add it up.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, it ends up you sort of get a feeling for where your money goes, I guess. And now it's like, now you don't have that expense, and in some of our cases you just don't have money either. So it's like in some sense it's started to level out in that way. But yeah.
So your feelings on watching so much Sex in the City. So you and John
Hmm.
Daly, who are not the target audience for Sex in the City.
No, I
Um,
don't think so. Yeah, we're 38-year-old married men.
that's right. And
Hmm.
is it kind of like you're breaking down each episode? What are you finding? And are you finding the appeal to this very popular show? Are you identifying with any specific of the characters in that
Well,
foursome?
yeah, I think I mean, it's interesting because you would think the demographic obviously somewhat heavily female. You would think, and it's certainly a show that I think speaks specifically to the female dating experience. But also, it's like, yeah, we end up just being, we're watching it like, oh, this would be funny. We're a couple of straight dudes who are in our 30s watching the show 20 years too late, but it's like I think we end up identifying to it in the same way. It's like we're all a little Samantha sometimes, and it's stuff like that. And then you got your Carrie, who's a mess, and we're all a mess, but she contains multitudes.
Yeah.
So, you know, she's probably the most ultimately relatable one of it. But it's interesting to just watch, like, also a time capsule of New York as being New Yorkers. Because I think when did you move to the city? Was it 2000?
2002.
2002. Okay. So, like, yeah, the show started in like 98 and then it ran to 2004. So, like, just seeing that New York is a blast from the past. And it's sort of like, and by the end of it, it's the New York that you and I like arrived to in the first place. So,
Yeah.
that's been like a fun thing to see too.
Do you so who explain I want you to break down for people like me who never watched Sex in the City in a very short
Yeah.
synopsis. What is Sex in the City to you, Kevin?
Sex in the City to me, well, because I began watching it in 2019 with my with my best friend, basically. Sex in the City to me is a good reason. It's been a good excuse to see a friend a lot and to talk about friendship things and relationship things. And I think it's almost one that I think it's why actually do. It started as a bit, but I do sincerely enjoy the show. I think, and I think it's because much like The Bachelor or something, it is a show you can kind of talk over in some ways, and it's an extremely social thing because it's a conversation starter in so many ways. So myself and John have done a lot of there's a lot of things in the show that spur conversation that we've never had before in terms of like what do what's just things you do in your relationships. There's a guy who dumps someone with a post-it note. So the worst ways you've been dumped, the worst ways you've dumped people. Obviously, there's a bunch of deep cut sex talk in this thing too, which I feel like they kind of got away from as time went on. In the first season, there's like people peeing on people and stuff, introducing butt stuff and all that stuff pretty early. And then later on, they were like, "All right, this should have a plot, I guess." But yeah,
And she is a Carrie is the main character. That's
it's
Sarah.
your SJP.
Yeah, and she's a writer.
Yeah,
She's a sex writer for a magazine. That's the background of her.
she is. She's a
Okay,
sex columnist, or as my co-host John Daly says, sex article writer.
sex article
Yes,
writer.
and it's based on Candace Bushnell, who's a real writer. And I did read some of her stuff, and I have no hesitation in saying she is a terrible writer. Candace Bushnell, her writing is horrendous and vapid to an insane degree that it is shocking that a show with any heart was made out of it. And Carrie on the show, I also think, is not a good writer. Carrie's not a good writer, but I do think the show itself is very well written for the
Okay,
most part.
that's good.
So it's interesting because I got the Sex and the City audio book after I started watching this. I'm like, oh, this is research, sure. And I was just like, my God, this would not. I mean, I guess this would get a passing grade because the grammar's there in a college. class, but holy shit, is it bad. But then the show, whoever, I guess Darren Star is the guy who he was just friends with Candace Bushnell and made a show out of it. And once they got Michael Patrick King on board as a writer, it actually got good. See, look at all this inside stuff I accidentally know about Sex in the
You know
City
a
now.
lot,
But
yeah. You've been
I
absorbing
know.
this world you've been
Yes.
listening to it, you probably dream about it. Have you found yourself becoming more of a sensitive man or insensitive
No.
man by being exposed to these themes?
I
No.
think it's been, I mean, it's been nice to like I said, I think like it's one thing we've heard from fans who listen to the Sex and the City It's podcast is that it's just been like it's been, they've enjoyed hearing an actual friendship like on a podcast. Like several of our reviews on iTunes have referred to like the wholesome boys like friendship. like so it's, I think like, I don't know if we've been more sensitive, but I think it's been interesting that you have two dudes who have made a life in comedy actually having like sincere talks about relationship things that I guess we wouldn't have otherwise, you
Yeah.
know. And it's just been, and it's a nice excuse to get together once a week and you know, have a drink, watch a lady show, and talk.
That sounds like what everyone needs right now is just an excuse to like watch something together and
Yeah.
just chat about it. Like, we don't have that many shows anymore that are like the appointment television, water cooler talk type things happening where you kind of got like, I used to get together just to show how old I am, but we used to get together with all of my friend group and we would all watch Lost. You know, we would
Oh
all
yeah.
watch Lost, and it was a weird show, and it was full of mystery, and no one knew what was going on, including the writers who wrote the show and then kept writing the show, but they had no idea what was going on because they didn't know when they were going to get canceled, so they just kept on making it up. But we would get together and like make dinner and then watch Lost, and that was like a thing. And
It's great. Yeah.
it's yeah, and it's hard to find those things these days, other than like The Bachelor or Bachelorette, where it's like this silly event.
And where it
Um,
happens live, right? Because it's so many of the TV things now are like binge things, and no one's
yeah,
binging things at the same time.
exactly. So we need to find a system where we can all watch something at the same time. Like, everybody go to Netflix and everybody watch this show, and we're all going to watch The Haunting of whatever at the exact same time, and no one can go ahead of you because that breaks the rules.
Yes,
Um,
and that's kind of, that's one of the things we're doing on the Patreon. Kind of is we're having people on there, and in the Discord chat, we're picking a movie, we're watching it all together, chatting while it happens in there,
that's fun.
making
That's kind of like
making drinks.
it's like a live version of like Mystery Science Theater, where you can kind of just make jokes all the time
Exactly.
in real
Yeah.
time with your friends. And
Hmm.
that would be a fun thing if we could all do that together to watch. If we had watched like the debates together, that would be fun. And there could
Oh,
just be like
totally.
a chat box of jokes. I'm
And
in.
that's,
Count
yeah.
me
Hey,
in.
you can come on board, Marty. We're
I'd love it.
happy. Send you the invite.
So we're gonna go. Everyone who's listening has to go to this Patreon. So what is it? Patreon
Dot
slash.
com. Yeah, patreon.com/Kevin and John, JON. And yeah, we called it that instead of, obviously this began out of the Sex and the City It's podcast, but John and I are going to be watching a bunch of other stuff. We're going to be talking about a bunch of other movies, doing some other TV shows. We have we have a level in there where people can just literally on demand a podcast from us on the Patreon, where they can just, if they jump in at tier 3, you can just ask us to do a podcast on any movie or any single TV episode, and we will do it.
That would be
We're gonna
really
do,
interesting if like slacker college kids started using you to do their homework, where like they were supposed to watch a film for film class and they didn't want to watch it, so they get the tier that makes you have an on-demand podcast, and it's like they make you watch some weird 1950s whatever art film, and then you have to
yeah.
talk about it, and they're just like, "This is great stuff. I have to write a report on this tomorrow."
Yeah, and that's the thing John was saying. He's like, there's some weird stuff people could just make us watch, and we had to be like, okay, no snuff films. We're not doing any of that.
Got to
We're
put
not
your foot down. Yeah.
Yes, but that's really about it. We'll watch a weird old art film. We'll watch a silent picture from the teens. Who cares? If people are jumping in there. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's
You're like, I feel like the exam season's happening in film school because everyone's making me watch Birth of a Nation again. How many times do I have to watch Birth of a Nation and tell you people what it's about?
This is our fourth Birth of a Nation podcast, the least well-rated podcast on the internet. Yeah, we're gonna do a thing once a month where we're gonna invite people to a Zoom room, and John and I are gonna be we're basically gonna be doing a Sex in the City brunch, because one of the famous, basically a scene that occurs in every one of their episodes is the four gals, a scene they're all in together is having brunch together. That's where they really talk about the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a boozy brunch once a month where we have people can email us in relationship questions and anecdotes to talk about before that, or they can join us live. So yeah, that'll be.
And the names,
thing.
the Sex and the City, it's brand. I mean, having two guys talk about sex and relationships, it's the TV show is just a jumping off point, and you could keep on growing this into much more non-Sex in the City direct related stuff.
Right. We've had someone ask us on the Patreon to be like, we would love an episode of your wives addressing claims you've made. And we're like, I mean, they listen to the show, so it's not like we're lying about anything. But just in terms of the deeply personal stories that the two of us have gotten into on the thing.
Does your wife Jamie jump in? Did she have to watch any of these shows with you, or is this something that she does not participate in or doesn't want to participate in, or was she already a fan of the Sex and the City show?
Oh yeah, she listens. She listens to all. She's a completist. She's listened to all of it. She says it's her favorite podcast, and it's very nice. She guest co-hosted on a couple of episodes, and and John Daly's wife, Kristen Lavin, is also they're both very good on their own. They really should just have their own podcast, but
they're gonna have a spinoff.
That's
and it's gonna crush
you. I would be happy. Happy to be crushed. Keep it in the house as long as someone pops off. We just need someone to hit it here. Really, someone's got to make something happen in these houses.
They will. I have a good feeling about your Sex in the City. It's brand, the whole brand name. You can put out a whole line of home loungewear. You guys are sitting at home. I want some nice, velvet or velour tracksuits that I can wear around the house in comfort.
Oh yeah, John has a legit smoking jacket that he's just had for years and years, which seems like a Marty Dundix thing. I wouldn't be surprised if you had a smoking jacket.
I might have one or two in the closet that I picked up.
Two is bold
along the way.
Yes. What is and then we're also going to do non-Patreon wise. We have to pick a new show to start binging as well, and we've been wanted to sort of have the gimmick being dudes watching mainly like women's shows, and the two we've had suggested most are Desperate Housewives and The OC. Have you seen either of those?
I've seen both of those. Yeah.
Okay. What do you think would be better for us?
The OC is a great time capsule. It's a great show. It had really good themes. It was an easy show to watch. It was very, it's almost like you could be maybe you could watch 90210. I mean, that's
that John mentioned that 9021 Bros as a title. Pretty
there you
good.
Go.
So,
there you go. I think that you've just. I think that you've just invented a whole new show for yourself, and that's a great show.
Hey,
and then that has a spinoff, like that jumps into Melrose Place. I mean, and then you could watch all of that, and then the 90210 reboot that is now that happened. You could even do that. So you have a lot of content to go through.
And that takes us to our mid-50s. Basically.
You've planned it. You're done.
That's John's kids will be graduating college by the time we're done with that. Yeah.
By that time, we'll be living underground, Kevin. We're going to be mole people, and the whole, we're all going to be wearing weird jumpsuits that are all the same beige. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see where we are.
We're approaching nuclear bunker stuff. Yeah.
I'm in a bunker now. I don't leave the house.
You are, but it's a very nice bunker, Marty.
Thank you.
Have you had a binge that you've really enjoyed
Oh,
this quarantine season?
I've
Have
binged.
you had like a top binge
I've
or
binged.
like a sneaky one?
I ended up. I watched something. I watched the full run, 6 seasons of something 3 times.
Whoa!
So
What was that?
it was
Mad
Bosch.
Men?
Bosch on
Bosch
Bosch is so good.
on Amazon,
On
right?
Amazon. It's a cop show. It is a based on a novel series by I think Patterson. No, not James Patterson. Michael Connolly. Michael Connolly, and he's written
Okay.
I think like 30 Bosch books. But this is an amazing show, and it is a grizzled LAPD detective, and it has everything you're expecting it to have. And he's a loner, but he sticks to the rules, but he doesn't stick to the rules. And
Sure. Yeah, I gotcha.
and every season is like 2 long cases, like 2 long mystery murder type things. And he's a very rich and complicated character. There's lots of other good people. It has tons of amazing actors. Like it's all these actors from like The Wire and uh, maybe like Game of Thrones, maybe some in there, and maybe some House of Cards, and maybe there's like a lot of just like these like really marquee actors are just kind of shoved into the show, and they're really good. And I watched it on my own, and I binge watched the whole thing, and then I recommended it to my mom, and I had seen my mom for like a certain amount of time, and we binge watched the entire thing in like 6 days, 6 seasons.
Okay.
It's a
I
lot of
mean,
Bosch. And
having a
then
show you can watch with your mom is good too.
and then I ended up watching it maybe halfway through when we introduced my dad into the equation. We had to start over from scratch. So then we had to rewatch the whole thing again. Now maybe I didn't watch the entire third season with them because I came back to New York, but my mom
Mhm.
watched. So my mom watched the 2 seasons. I watched 2.5, 3 seasons. My dad's watched all of it, and he grumbled the entire time. But he did watch it because it like sucks you in. So I recommend everybody should watch Bosch. I watched everything else on television already, so that's why I watched something 3 times. I had already watched Ozarks. I had already watched um, what else? There's a whole bunch of stuff on television that I watched. Kevin, did you watch everything? I'm
Sure. It's hard to remember what you watch. In terms of things you've watched all the way through twice, that's impressive and that's a good list. I've probably seen nearly every Law and Order.
yeah,
That's I mean just that's always been my hangover show is
yeah.
the reruns of Law and Order marathon. So that's one I will rewatch just as a comfort food thing. In terms of actual series I've purposefully watched all the way through more than once, I guess The Wire, Friday Night Lights, and probably West Wing are the three main ones where each time I watched it on my own and then watched it again with my wife. Actually, we watched Friday Night Lights at the same time all the way through. I
Friday
think we
Night
watched
Lights is
that together
great,
twice, but
so good.
wonderful. Yeah.
Um, what else did I pick up that was really I've been trying to get everybody to. Well, I watched everything on HBO. It's just kind of like you watch everything on whatever service. You're like, I watched everything on HBO, and then I watched everything that is good on Amazon, and then I watched everything on Netflix, and then something new will come out, and I'll move back over, and I'll watch that whole thing on Netflix. Something that I was really shocked that didn't get renewed for a second season was Teenage Bounty Hunters. Did you watch Teenage Bounty Hunters on Netflix?
We did, and it was great.
It was great, and then it immediately got canceled. Like they
Oh yeah,
announced
because
they announced it like a month after they had this huge premiere, and then they're like not renewed after they had all this praise, and it was really good, and then not renewed. I'm like, why not? Like that was like the coolest,
it was
kind of
great. Yeah,
very
no,
imaginative.
yeah, and I mean those the two lead actresses in that are going to be big. I think they're both really good, and yeah, it was actually funny and good, interesting stuff. It was great. But Netflix, their business model is they're just like in those old like movies where aliens come to a new planet, just use up all the resources and leave it dead. Like that's Netflix's business plan. Is they put money into a show to try to get any new subscribers, and then they don't care about making those subscribers happy anymore. They already have you, so they'll cancel stuff as soon as they have that demographic. They're just trying to get different things to get each different demographic, use you up, and then throw it away.
It's very true.
So that's sucks because that show was really good. That
it was good. It was
wife,
funny.
Jamie, and I watched it.
It was like inventive, and
watch Teenage Bounty Hunters, everybody.
Yeah, go watch Teenage Bounty Hunters, and then all of Cobra Kai, easily binge that in 2 days.
Yeah,
and I can't believe now I have to wait for the big third season where they're going to introduce the ex-girlfriend, I think, into that one. What's her name? Who was the ex-girlfriend? I can't remember her. She was in Adventures in Babysitting.
I do not remember.
But they're going to be putting... Did you see Cobra Kai?
No, but I've heard it's good.
Oh my God, it's so good. And it's annoying because, well, they made it for YouTube television. So it was on YouTube TV, whatever the YouTube pay, the pay YouTube TV, which no one subscribes to. So no one really saw this. And then Netflix took it because it was good, and then they put it on Netflix, and then it became like the #1 show because they had 2 seasons to just immediately give to a bunch of subscribers, which everyone downloaded because it is so perfect for anyone who was, a kid of the 80s who watched Karate Kid movies. You just loved it because both of the actors in Cobra Kai aged well. Like, they both look like they did in high school, but just older. And
good for the bully. A guy you haven't heard as much from. I mean, not that we've heard a ton from Ralph Macchio lately,
right.
But but still, it's cool to see that those guys still got it.
Yeah, and he's so funny. He plays such a good character. He plays such a guy stuck in the 80s, late 80s character, like in every way. Like, the car was so good, and he only listens to that kind of music, and he was just like, it was funny to see somebody be in such a non-internet kind of bubble. It was fun watching him get pushed into technology in the future and stuff, and his resistance to it, and he was like, I mean, he was such a bully, but I like that the show, he doesn't become less of a bully right away at all. Like, he's still kind of a dick the entire show, and he's teaching.
Well, that's how people.
Yeah. I like the natural progression of,
that's
like, he didn't change. Yeah, he didn't change fast, and that's great. Like, he was still kind of a jerk, and even at the end of the show, he was still a jerk. He didn't come up to this major, reform for a while, and the way that
I think there's something. Yeah, there's something about you, I think to some degree, maybe depressingly so, and sometimes positively, you are who you are. And we all have big ideas about improving and getting better. And I don't know, man, I this quarantine, when it began, I was like, I'm going to learn French and stuff. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm never going to have an appreciation for art. I think I just am who I am at this point. And I think that is good, where it's like, this guy was a bully. Guess what? He's still kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, if you've got that in you, you probably just have that in you.
Yeah, that's true. And also, you're very right about, we had the loftiest goals when we were like, okay, we're going to be locked inside for who knows how long. I'm going to be the much better version of myself. And then that lasted for about a week. And I was like, that sounds really hard. I'm going to keep just being the same person I am, but I'm not going to leave the house. Like, or you're like, I'm going to change it all. I'm going to pack it up, and I'm going to move to that new city, and I'm going to start that new life. And you're like, no, I'm not going to do any of that. It sounds just as hard as it did 2 years ago when you thought about doing that.
Oh, yeah, totally.
This is exciting, Kevin. I'm very excited about your Patreon and the. I mean, you still have some Sex and the City movies to watch, so people have a lot to catch up on.
Those will be Sex and the City. And if you haven't heard any of it, we got the whole series is out there with episodes on everything. 95 episodes. If you want a podcast to listen to, check it out. I think we, much like the show itself, changes and gets a lot better in season 2. But yeah. We'd love to have you check it out, listen to the podcast for free, and if you're into it, patreon.com/Kevin and John are doing we're doing a lot of other stuff,
and you have multiple tiers. What's the best tier that you came up with on the Patreon?
Well, basically, you get most everything if you jump in at the $5 a month, which is the first tier. You get, we almost everything that we offer gets to you there, and then basically you get the on-demand podcast, where you get to literally tell us what to do, and we will just do a podcast about it. That is at the $15 a month level. But yeah, just come. Feel free to listen to the podcast for free first, and if you dig it,
How
then
long is this podcast?
you'll have plenty of.
How long?
I mean, the podcast, the Sex and the City It's podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, we have 95 episodes, and the episodes themselves are typically like less than an hour.
Okay. That's great. I think that everybody looking for a podcast should definitely listen to the Sex and the City It's podcast, and I'm assuming that this podcast is everywhere podcasts can be downloaded.
Yes.
Where's the best? Because I'm sure that you've checked all the metrics. What's the podcast download, or whether it's Apple or Spotify or whatever? What's the place that is the biggest listener base for you? Have you found?
For us, it's like the normal Apple podcast, but we also have people going through Stitcher and a bunch through Spotify. And like I'm a Spotify person.
You're a Spotify person.
So we're How about you, Marty? Where are people coming to Talkward from?
No one listens to Talkward. This none of this is actually plugged in. So this is just you and I talking on Zoom for no good reason.
I mean, that's fine. I had an hour, so we're good. That's
I think Apple and Spotify are the two places that people listen to things. I'm always interested where I see it pop up other places that I never set up myself. So there is there is Stitcher, and there is other places that are like podcast RSS or whatever, and you're kind of like, where, who is this? What is this? Why am I on this? But you're on it, and that's fine. Someone added you into a podcast directory sometime. A lot of stuff just comes direct from.
Which that's one of those things where it's, I don't know like what's in it for them when people just like just put you on places without telling you. But hey, thanks.
Yeah, it's fine. We're all somehow going to generate tons of income from all these podcasts that people are downloading for free, which is fine. Everyone's fun. So people can follow you at Kevin McCaffrey on Twitter and on Instagram. They can find you on Instagram. You're always posting funny things on Instagram. And then the Sex and the City It's, do they have a place that lives on social media?
Yeah, find it on Instagram at Sex and the City It's. Just go get us there. We're also on Twitter and stuff, but Instagram's the most fun for us. So head over there at Sex and the City It's on Instagram.
That's wonderful. Wonderful talking to you, Kevin McCaffrey. I've missed you.
Yeah, great talking to you too, dude. Glad to see you back in Brooklyn after your foray to Maryland. I know, and nice to have you back. We're slightly closer together.
Yes, we are. I can. Have you been over to? Oh, did you vote?
I did, and actually, I'm going to Wisconsin to help drive people to the polls in Milwaukee on actual election day. So
look at you.
I voted.
Wow.
And I'm trying. I'm trying to do something out here. Yes.
That's very nice. Proud of you.
Yes. No, thanks.
We'll see
if it matters.
You're driving your car to Wisconsin?
Yep.
Wow. How long?
My mom has a lake house in Wisconsin, so that's where I'm staying.
Nice.
And then, so I have a place to stay. I've already voted early in New York, and then Wisconsin has gotten screwed over by some Supreme Court decisions. There's a ton of voter suppression out there, specifically in the cities. And if I can help a little bit in Milwaukee, that's what I wanted to do on the day. So, so that's what we're gonna do. That's how hard I voted.
You voted hard. You voted.
Yeah, man.
Nice job. Proud of you. Everybody,
Joe Jorgensen 2020, baby. Just kidding. Yeah.
Because of that, everyone listening to support Kevin for him supporting the Wisconsin voters, you got to go listen to Sex and the City It's and subscribe on Apple and Spotify and follow him on the social medias. Kevin McCaffrey, everybody, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Marty.
All right. So, Everybody, thanks for listening and thanks for watching. If you're watching, please follow Talkward on the social medias and the Twitters and the things, and go to weeklyhumorist.com and subscribe to that and get your funny updates from us. And that's pretty much the show. Thanks so much for listening and for watching. I'm Marty Dundix, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, man.